What's going on, everyone? So these letters that you're just seeing, these are Princeton and Oxford acceptances. These are from our clients. We have a 100% success rate, over $1 million in merit scholarships. And I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, like a really long time, because every week I get messages from students and parents asking the same questions, like what do top schools actually want? How do I stand out? My stats are good, but why am I still getting rejected? And I've been answering these one by one in shorter videos, but I want to make one thing, like one complete resource that covers everything start to finish. So that's what this is. And before we get into it, I want to tell you why you should actually listen to me because there are a lot of people online who talk about college admissions. So here's my answer to this. We have a 100% success rate. I've gotten Princeton, Oxford, Cornell, and Stanford this past cycle. I have over $1 million+ in merit scholarship secured just this cycle, and every single case study is public. You can go look them up right now. I've interviewed over 50 plus Ivy League students. These are real conversations, real applications on the record. These are all uploaded on my YouTube channel. So I've seen what these applications actually look like from the inside. And I've personally gone through 500 plus applications working with clients. So when I tell you what works, it's not really theory, it's pattern recognition from a massive sample size. And one more thing, I got rejected from college myself. I had the stats. I thought I had a strong application. I didn't get in. And then I spent a year figuring out exactly what I'd done wrong, rebuilt everything from scratch, and got into Dartmouth and NYU with full merit scholarships. So I've been on both sides of this. So look, we're going to go through everything. Why strong students get rejected, the narrative framework, the activity section, the essays, the school list, and what to do right now based on what grade you're in. All right, so let's start at the beginning. All right. Okay. So I want to start with the thing that nobody tells you because I think most students walk into this process with the completely wrong mental model of how it works. And that wrong mental model is what gets them rejected. So here it is. Most students think college admissions is a filter. You put in good enough inputs like your GPA, SAT, and your activities, and the right outputs come out like a vending machine, right? You push the right buttons, you press the right buttons, and you get what you want. And the reason that model is wrong is simple. At schools like Harvard, uh, Yale, Princeton, the acceptance rate is under 4%, right? 90% of the people who apply have great stats. So stats don't decide who gets in. They decide who gets considered. And that's a massive difference, right? So what decides this part, right? So what decides the bottom of the funnel? What actually separates the students who get in from the students who don't? And I want to show you something. Let me tell you about 4 real students. By the way, these case studies are all on my YouTube channel, so go look them up as well. Student 1 is Sam, right? Sam is a valedictorian, 5.0 weighted GPA, 1560 SAT, full IB diploma. She built an AI model to detect Alzheimer's disease from MRI scans as a high schooler. She interned at the Reagan Institute, which is a Harvard MIT affiliated research facility, and she had multiple awards, and she was the JROTC captain. By any measure, she was impressive, right? And she got into MIT. But here's what I want you to notice about Sam. Every single thing she did connected back to one idea. She wanted to use technology to solve problems in medicine. The AI project, the Reagan internship, even JROTC, when you ask her about it, she talks about discipline and structure that made her a better researcher. Everything pointed to the same place. All right. Student number 2 is Michael. Michael is a valedictorian too. All right. His SAT was 1430 at a school where the average was mid 1100s because SAT really wasn't required. He had limited AP offerings. He had to self-study AP physics because his school really didn't offer it. He was also under the first percentile for height due to a genetic condition that required multiple surgeries. And he got into Yale. His main essay was about weightlifting, benching 225 pounds at 120 pounds body weight. And the line that I think got him in was turn 1 percentile of height into 1 percentile of lifting. That is not just a good line. That's a person telling you exactly who they are in 9 words. Now let's go to student number 3. Sia had a 34 ACT. That's the bottom 35 percentile for Harvard. Her school didn't even offer the SAT. She's from a football school that historically sends maybe 3 students total to Ivy League schools. She's also one of 7 people in her family, and she grew up in a neighborhood she had to move out of. And she got into Harvard. And the essay that got her in was not her AI project, not her wind turbine business, not her science platform that now has 75 plus writers. It was about a debate with her father, and that was it. All right. So you might be seeing like a pattern here, right? Let's move on. Let's talk about Jacob. All right. Jacob is a 4.0 and a 1570 SAT, but he was at the bottom of his school in a competitive magnet program. His school has sent almost nobody to Stanford in years. He didn't even start his application until August of senior year. He got deferred from early action and then he got into Stanford. So now look at this board. 4 completely different profiles, different stats, different schools, different backgrounds. What do you think they all have in common? Every single one of them, when you read their application, felt inevitable. You finished reading and you thought, of course, Sam is building AI tools for medicine. Of course, Michael turned a physical limitation into an athletic achievement and wrote about what that means. Of course, Sia, who grew up breaking every expectation her background set for her, is the person who sets up a dual enrollment program in her own school and starts a science platform because the existing ones weren't good enough. And of course, Jacob, who got cut from the basketball team in 9th grade and came back as a starter in 12th, applied late and still found a way to make it work. They were all inevitable, and that's the bar. Not impressive, but inevitable. And here's the brutal version of why most students don't clear that bar, right? The vending machine student has collected things. This is the vending machine student. So they have the 4.0 GPA, 1550 SAT, they got the debate, hospital volunteership, science fair, violin, everything. But the inevitable student has a story. And the story makes every single thing they've done feel like it had to happen, like it was building towards something. That story, that through line, that's what we're going to build in this video. Chapter number 2 is the narrative framework. Okay, so how do you actually build a narrative? Let me give you the framework I use with every single client. I call it the narrative pyramid. All right, we have 3 layers and you build them in this exact order, bottom to top. Skip a layer and the whole thing collapses. Layer number 1 is your theme. This is layer 2, which is proof, and layer number 3 is your vision. Let's talk about the theme first. Your theme is the single most important sentence in your entire application, and most students never write it down explicitly, but admissions officers feel it or they don't. And if they don't feel it, you're out. Here's what the theme is not. It's not your intended major. It's not a description of what you do. It's who you are as a mission. Let me show you what I mean with actual real examples. For example, Sam's theme was, I use technology to make medicine more human and more accessible. Michael's was, I find ways to turn limits into leverage. His was, I build things where they should not exist. And Jacob's was, I close the gap between where I am and where I should be. Right? See the pattern? Every single theme is specific. It's active. Like it describes someone doing something. And it could only describe that one person. You could not swap these themes between students. They're not interchangeable. That's how you know they're real. Now, how do you find your theme? 3 questions, and I want you to really answer them honestly, right? Question number 1 is, what do you keep coming back to, even when nobody's watching? Not what you're good at, not what looks good on paper, but what pulls you back even when it's inconvenient, right? Even when there's no college application, because admissions officers can smell performance from a mile away. They read thousands of essays and they know when someone did something because they cared versus because it will look good. All right, that's number 1. Number 2 is, what problem generally makes you angry? Not generally angry, but specifically. The thing where when you see it, you can't not say something. Because the best narratives come from a real frustration with something in the world, right? Michael watched his own body try to limit him his whole life and he got angry about it. And then he channeled that anger into a 225-pound bench press and an essay that made jail admissions officers feel something. Sia watched her school send almost nobody to elite colleges while she knew the talent was there. That made her angry. So she set up dual enrollment programs, started a science platform, and built a wind turbine in her garage. That's not really ambition, if you think about it. That's anger, which is productively directed, right? So this is number 2. Number 3 is, what do people come to you for, right? If your friends, your younger siblings, your family, they keep asking you for the same type of help, that's signal, right? You're already known for something, so you can just use it. All right. Your theme is then sitting in the middle of these 3, right? And once you find it, and you will find it, the rest of the application basically builds itself. Now, I want to pause here for a little bit and show you what happens when you find a theme for a student who didn't really have one. Because I think this is the most powerful example I have. This was one of our first clients. He was UK-based international student applying to both Princeton and Oxford in the same cycle. And his stats were everything you'd expect from a Princeton admin. Near perfect transcript, 1570 SAT, and theater. He had really good theater. He had awards, honors, the kind of theater kid where people just know, right? And then separately, he was really interested in Venezuelan politics, and he had very deep research into South American economics and elections, like genuinely library level research. And when he first came to us, his application read like two completely different people, right? That was the main issue. There was no reason, at least not on paper, why these two worlds, the theater and Venezuelan politics, existed in the same person. Now you're probably thinking, okay, so what? He has two interests. Lots of people have two interests. Here's why it matters. When an admission officer sees that, they make one of two assumptions. Either this kid is a talented actor doing politics to seem well-rounded, or he's a serious researcher doing theater as a checkbox. Neither version is compelling, and neither version is inevitable. So over 2 months, we built a bridge, right? Move one was we merged the theater and the politics. We helped him create a theater program that educated audiences about the Venezuelan situation, and suddenly his theater became a medium rather than a separate activity, right? Venezuelan politics then became his message. Now he's not just an actor who also studies politics, but he's someone who uses art to make people understand things that are hard to understand. Move two was that we connected his Nigerian roots. His family background carries a specific kind of perseverance, the kind that gets built when your family has had to fight for their place in the world. So we helped him channel that into interfaith dialogue advocacy through his Bible study group. Now that didn't just remain a religious club. Now it became a direct expression of a worldview built through heritage, right? Move 3 was the essays. His main essay started with a monologue about diarrhea. I'm not joking. And by the time we were done, every single thing on his application pointed back to that one item. The bridge builder, right? Someone who finds walls between worlds and tears them down with art, with research, and with his own heritage. Princeton and Oxford were the results of this guy, and both in the same cycle. That's what a theme does, all right? Now, let's talk about layer two, which is the proof. Layer two is your activities. And here's what most students get wrong about the activities section. They treat it as a list. Here's everything I've done, impressive things, all of them, but random with no connection, right? What you want instead is a portfolio. Every activity is a different expression of the same theme. Different arena, but same mission. So here's the thing I also have to address because I get this question all the time. How many activities do I need? The answer is not really a number. The answer is enough to prove your theme from multiple angles with enough depth in each one that it's clearly real, right? Jacob had about 6 to 7 main activities, but two of them, his cello and taekwondo, he had done for 11 years each. 11 years. That's not a resume item. That's a life commitment. And then aerospace research, model rocketry club, basketball, Conrad challenge, every single one of these either demonstrates technical depth, persistence through failure, or both. Sia had fewer activities than most Harvard applicants, but her wind turbine project took over a year, went through 4 prototypes, used CFD simulations and open foam testing, and is now on the verge of becoming a real company. One project deeper than most students go in their entire high school career, right? So, depth, this is what you want to go for because this beats this every single time, right? Now, let's go over to the layer 3, which is the vision. Layer 3, which is the top of the pyramid, is your vision, right? And this is the part that most students either skip entirely or get completely wrong. Your vision is your answer to why does any of this matter? What does the world look like because you exist in it? And here's the key. It has to be really specific. Not inspiring, but really specific. Bad vision could be, I want to make the world a better place, right? Extremely vague and doesn't really tell you what you want to do, right? A good version would be, I want to develop affordable stem cell and gene therapies for genetic diseases in developing countries because I watched these diseases go untreated for way too long, right? That's Sia's vision, roughly. And when you read her Why Harvard essay, that's what you feel. Specific, real, urgent, and completely connected to everything she's already done, right? The vision should connect your past to your future, right? It makes your whole application feel like it was building toward this moment. Like, of course, this is where it was all going. When you have a strong theme, a proof set that all points to it, and a vision that makes the whole thing feel necessary, you're not just another folder in the pile. You're the folder that they remember then. Now, let's move on to the chapter number 3. All right? Okay. So you have your theme, you have your proof. Now, let's talk about how to actually write it up because the activity section is where I see many students leave points on the table. You have 150 characters per activity, and most students really just waste them. Because that's really nothing and everything, because in 150 characters, you're not describing what you did, you're making the admissions officers feel the impact of what you did. Here's the before and after of a really bad activity description and a really good one. All right, let's just read it together, right? Member of robotics team, participated in competitions and helped build robots. No impact, extremely vague, and doesn't really show anything, right? And after is let 12% build team design chassis that cut weight 30% and advance to state finals. Same activity, but completely different signal. The first one tells me that you showed up, but the second one tells me you led, you innovated, and you created a result that had never existed before, right? Every single activity description should have three things: an action verb that shows leadership or initiative, a specific number or result, and something that contextualizes why it matters. Now, let me tell you about the ordering, because most students put their most impressive sounding activity first and then go in descending order of prestige. That's the wrong move. Your most thematically important activity should go first, right? Not your most impressive one, your most thematically central one, right? The one that most directly expresses your theme, because that's the one that's going to prompt the admissions officers to read everything else through the right lens. All right. Okay. And then you just go down to provide more supporting proof to your main thing. All right. Okay. So I need to address something else, because I see a lot of conflicting advice online about this as well. Spike versus well-rounded. And I want to give you my actual take. Spike means you're extraordinarily deep in one area, right? Uh, well-rounded means you're solid across many areas, and it's something like flatter. And the conventional wisdom now is that spikes win. Be the person who's the best in the world at one thing. I think that's partially right, but Jacob is proof that it's not the whole picture. Jacob had two 11-year commitments, cello and taekwondo. That's spiky, but he also had aerospace research, basketball, model rocketry, and a business competition. This was multiple connected spikes, right? He calls this mid-maxing, which is basically meeting a very high standard across many things rather than being obsessed with perfection in one thing, right? And he got into Stanford. All right. So the real answer is this. You want multiple spikes that all point back to the same theme. You don't want random width. You want depth across related areas. And the thing that connects the areas is then your theme again, right? So that's the most important part. And here's another question that I know some of you are very worried about as well. What if you generally don't have research experience? What if you're not the captain of anything? What if your school doesn't offer the things that other schools offer? Michael's school didn't really offer AP physics, so he self-studied it, and then he became so good at it that he started teaching it to his classmates. His teacher's first year, and Michael was effectively co-teaching the class. That is not a weakness. That is one of the most compelling things on his entire application. Shows intellectual initiative, leadership, and the kind of person who creates their own resources when the system doesn't provide them, right? CS School didn't have a dual enrollment program with the local university, so she set one up herself. She found the university, made the connection, and now her entire school has access to courses they didn't have before, right? So a gap in resources usually can lead to a lot of opportunity, because then you can actually create something, right? The schools that have everything, like every program, every resource, those schools produce students who consume what's already there. The schools that have nothing, they sometimes produce students who build what should be there. And at the Ivy League level, builders beat consumers every single time, right? Okay, this is a chapter everyone skips to. And I get it, the essays feel like the most controllable part. You can rewrite them, refine them, iterate on them. So let's go deep on this. There are three types of essays you need to understand: the personal statement, the supplementals, and the YS essays, right? Different jobs, different strategies, and let's go one by one. All right, so let's talk about the personal statement first. Most students think the personal statement is a summary of their best achievements, a narrative version of their resume, and I understand why you want to show everything you've done, but that's really the wrong job. Your activities section already has this, right? The personal statement is for one thing only. It's the answer to who you are as a human being and how you think, right? And the best personal statements I've ever read, and I've read hundreds, they all start basically the same way. where there's a moment and something that puts the reader inside a specific time and place. Michael's essay started with the barbell, not I have a genetic condition that affects my height, not I've always been passionate about physical fitness. He started with the moment, the bar, the weight, the specific physical reality of what it feels like to lift something that should be impossible for someone his size. And then from that specific moment, he zoomed out, right? So what does this mean? What does it say about how he moves through the world, right? That arc, that specific moment to larger meaning is the structure of every great personal statement, right? So start so specific that the reader can smell the room, then zoom out until the reader understands something about you that no other part of your application could have told them, right? And here's the mistake that kills like 80% of otherwise good essays. They tell instead of show. Telling looks like something like this. Through my experience volunteering at hospital, I learned the importance of compassion and developed strong communication skills. This is just a gist of what telling looks like, right? I promise you, every single applicant writes like some version of this sentence, like word for word. Showing, on the other hand, looks like this. A 9-year-old in room 4B hadn't spoken in 3 days after surgery, and on week 4, he asked me if robots would ever be able to feel pain. I said I didn't know, and he said good, because then at least they'd understand me. I went home and started building a voice interface for nonverbal patients that night, right? So this excerpt from an essay actually shows you actually shows you how to write in a way that makes admissions officers feel something, right? One just tells me you have compassion, the other, it makes me feel it, right? And there's a massive difference between those two things. The test I give students in this is usually after you read your essay, does the reader lean forward or lean back? If they lean back, it's telling. And if they lean forward, it's usually shown. So rewrite until every paragraph makes them lean forward, right? All right, here's another thing that I want to tell you about the essays. Might be counterintuitive, but really important, right? So Sia spent 7 months on her MIT essays, but got rejected. She had multiple drafts, extensive feedback, heavily refined. But on the other hand, she spent 2 weeks on her Harvard essays, 2 weeks with less editing, less external input, but it was more authentic voice, and she got into Harvard, right? Now, I'm not saying don't edit your essays. I'm saying there's a point where editing starts removing the thing that makes the essay yours, the specific rhythms of how you think, the particular way you phrase something, the voice that only belongs to you. For example, Jacob went through 5 completely different topics before landing on cello, 6 or 7 draft total. But at some point, he stopped trying to write the perfect essay and started writing the true essay, right? And that's a different thing. The question to ask yourself is not really that is this impressive. The question is, does this sound like me, right? Okay, now that this is done, this is the last thing I want to talk about in the personal statement area. Now let's move on to the supplemental essays. Okay, so supplementals, most schools want between 2 and 5 short essays, usually 150 to 250 words each, and students treat these as an afterthought, which is a huge mistake because collectively they often do more work than a personal statement. Here's the job of a supplemental essay, right? Each supplemental is a different angle on the same person. And the best supplementals do something the personal statement really can't do. They show specific intellectual depth in a focused area, right? So you can show intellectual curiosity, community, challenge, or your personality through those supplements. Michael's Yale supplementals connected physics to puzzle solving methodology, right? Wind ensemble to the evolution from solo work to collaborative thinking. And then his short takes, one of which was about being a master of hide and seek due to his height, showed something that the rest of his application really couldn't. That he doesn't take himself too seriously, that he can laugh at himself, that he's a full human being, right? Not a research machine. That humanity, showing the admissions officer that you're actually a person they want to spend time with, is what the short creative prompts are for, right? And most students either skip them entirely or treat them like mini versions of the personal statement. So don't do that. Use them to show a side of yourself that the rest of the application can't really show. Let's move on to the YS essay. Okay, the YS, this one has a formula that most people don't really know, and once you know it, it's actually one of the easiest essays to write, right? Most students, they write YS essays that say some version of, I've always dreamed of attending X, your amazing professors and research opportunities excite me, and I know I'll thrive in your community. This is not really a YS essay. That's just a compliment, right? And admissions officers have read 10,000 of those. A real YS essay answers a different question. Not why do I like this school, but why is this school the logical next step given everything I've already done, right? Here's the 3 things every YS essay need. One specific academic program or lab or professor, He should be named. One specific extracurricular community element that connects you to your theme, and one sentence that explains why this school with these specific resources is where your story leads, right? Okay, now that we're done with that chapter, let's move on to the school list. I'll make this chapter fast because I think people overcomplicate it. Most students build their school list based on rankings, like number one, number two, number three, and then they add a few safeties and call it done. The problem with that approach is that rankings tell you about prestige. They don't tell you about fit. And fit, meaning the match between who you are and what you want to study and what the school actually offers, is one of the most important signals in your entire application, right? So this is your fit and this is your prestige. All right. So basically, you want to skip both of these sections and apply exclusively to this, because these will be your dream schools and this you'll enjoy a lot, but they'll have less prestige, but you'll have a better time, right? So here's the framework I use for choosing how many schools I want to apply to, right? Schools where your stats are below median, but your narrative is a strong fit. I usually apply to 3 to 5. Target where your stats are at or above median and the fit is strong. 3 to 5 here too. And then safeties, schools where you're clearly above the stats range and you generally be happy attending. Usually 2 to 3, right? That's 9 to 13 schools total, not 20. Spreading yourself across 20 application means you're writing 20 generic ISSs and admissions officers can tell, right? And unless you have a lot of help with the college counseling and everything, I wouldn't advise you to do that. And here's the thing about safeties that nobody really talks about. Your safety school should not feel like settling, right? It should feel like a genuine option you'd be excited about, because the mentality of applying to safeties as backup plans bleeds into how you route this application. One more thing about schools is to pay attention to what each school specifically values. MIT and Caltech usually want people who build things, so show them something you've built. Stanford, they want people who combine intellectual curiosity with real-world impact, and they also really favor entrepreneurs, right? Yale, they want interdisciplinary thinkers, students who connect ideas across fields. For example, Michael connected physics to puzzles, to music, to weightlifting, and Yale loved it, right? Harvard, they want people who are going to do something important and leadership, right? And Princeton, they just want depth over breadth, the student like who has gone further into one thing than anyone else at their age, right? So fit your narrative to the school's values, and not by changing who you are, by finding the school where who you are is exactly what they're looking for, right? But let's move on to chapter number 6, which is what to do right now. And this is going to be a grade by grade breakdown, right? So this is the last chapter and I want this to be really practical, like actually actionable depending on where you are right now. So if you're a freshman or sophomore, you're the most valuable thing in the world right now. You have the time. And the one thing I want you to do with it is find the one or two things you're generally obsessed with. Now what looks good on paper, and now what your parents think is depressive, but what pulls you back even when it's inconvenient. Then go really deep on one thing, right? Join the thing, start the thing if it doesn't exist, and this is important, I need you to not stop. Consistency over 4 years is more compelling than excellence over like 1 year, right? So don't worry about your theme yet. Just find your obsessions and the theme will emerge from the obsessions, right? Junior year is the most important part of your application in terms of academics. Your first semester grades are on the application. Your SAT should happen this year, ideally October or November. So you have time to retake in spring if needed. And summer before senior year is when you want to do your most significant activity, like your research, a project, an internship, something that becomes a centerpiece of your application, right? But the most important thing you should be doing this year is figure out your theme. Answer those 3 questions, the ones I've showed above. Go back to the video if you want to look at it again. Write it out, then look at your activity list and ask honestly, does every single thing point back to this? And if the answer is no, you still have time to fix it. Just do that, right? So these are 3 things you want to do, right? Okay, so if you're a senior, you probably don't have time to change your activities. What you have time to change is how you frame them, right? And that framing in your activity descriptions, in your personal statement, in your supplementals is everything, right? So find your theme this week, write it down in one sentence, then reread every piece of your application and ask if it connects back to that one sentence, right? If not, you just rewrite it until it does, right? Start your personal statement with a specific moment, not a summary, not a reflection, but a scene. Write it raw first and don't edit until the whole draft is done. Then you need to just cut ruthlessly, right? Your YSSs should name specific professors, specific labs, specific programs, because generic would just get you to be invisible. All right. I want to end with something that I think about a lot when I work with students. Every single student I mentioned in this video, Sam, Michael, Sia, Jacob, Jaden, who was our Princeton and Oxford student, they all had doubts. Sam wasn't sure her research was impressive enough. Michael almost didn't submit his SAT score because he thought 1430 was too low. Sia had a 34 SCT applying to Harvard. Jacob didn't even start his application until August and got deferred. And every single one of them got in, right? Not because they were perfect, but because they were inevitable, right? So your stats, they get you considered, but your narrative, that's what gets you in, right? So find your theme, make everything point to it, write essays that make people lean forward, and apply to schools where your specific story is exactly what they're looking for. That's it. That's the whole game. If you watched this far, and I appreciate you, here's what I want you to do. Drop a comment with any of your question and I'll make sure to reply it. I read every single comment. I've helped hundreds of students this way for free, mostly on my LinkedIn. And if you want to actually build this out, the full narrative, the essay strategy, the activity framing, the school list, all of it with our team, the link is in the description. Every case study is public. We have a 100% success rate. We have over $1 million in scholarships just this cycle, and you can verify everything. So go build your story, and I'll catch you in the next one.